So, Dr. Apala, we've been working on these for a while,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I think it's time we pull together a final video that talks about where society is going. What's going to happen as AI over the next decade takes its
Mm-hmm.
role in the world? What are the changes that we as designers need to work on?
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think from my perspective, as I sort of look at the proliferation of artificial intelligence and naturally with the generative tools and the AI tools and their accessibility in terms of how easily they're available and how sort of relatively easy it is to start using them, it's just everywhere now. Just like at one point, the computer was only accessible to the high priests of the corporate world, etc. But then suddenly there were laptops everywhere, and then the other devices and all. It's almost that flow that I'm seeing repeating again with artificial intelligence. And so I was wondering whether we will see a future where designers will continue to be the main critical thinkers in terms of all the experiences that technology wants designed and technology wants those experiences to be available. Will we as designers start to, sort of think about the importance of being the conscience keepers in a world where things could go in different directions, not very desirable directions, with the technology that can be very opaque? And it's all up to us. There are no two separate sort of heroes and villains. The hero and the villain is the one same individual or, entity, and that's the human race. So it's up to us what we do. And could it be possible that we start looking at, just as there has been some shift in at least thinking about the possibility of how the obsession with growth in all our economies is not the ideal way to sustain this planet and for all of us, for the human race to even exist. And there's conversations about degrowth, about ways of measuring how we are doing, not in terms of, say, gross domestic product, but gross national happiness. So can we start to, as designers, start to incorporate some of those into the technologies such as artificial intelligence, or in other words, to be able to tell those who are building the artificial intelligence systems that what are the parameters of success based on which recommendations are made and decisions are sort of communicated or presented in front of the users of these artificial intelligence systems? Can we start to seed the thought in the minds of those who are creating these systems? Let's look at alternative measures of what is it that one wishes to recommend to the end user. And we can draw from constructs, alternative constructs, such as, capabilities approach made popular by Amartya Sen, or gross national happiness. There are these constructs available. Even, the sustainable development goals that United Nations works on. And I know there's a lot of critiquing about that. There's a lot of critiquing about how the whole aspect of culture and the requirements of different cultures being different is completely left out of the sustainable development goals. But nevertheless, they are ways of shifting our perspective about what is it that we count as well-being, as success, as what needs attention from all of us. So can we start to recommend building some of those kinds of criteria into the artificial intelligence systems?
So I think you're talking about the artificial intelligence systems and technology driving or being part of a change in value system.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So as that value system changes, and it makes sense, right? So when you look at the global population tripling in my lifetime, right? All the people saying we need to produce more cars, maybe not on the right track. What is the way of being that we'll be crafting for the future. I think it's going to be different.
Yes, I agree. It will be about looking at perhaps how are we building communities? How are we strengthening communities at local levels, maybe bottom up rather than only top down? How are we at our local levels taking action for change by strengthening resilience on the ground through community building, through connections, which I think have, globalization has had this effect all over, where the idea of the connected communities who look at local requirements and therefore don't always buy into the global narratives, that has disappeared or has become sort of weak. Maybe we need to, our new way of being is to start again, look at how communities and the local needs can be, sort of revitalized and enlivened, and how technology can help us do that. There was a narrative that, anything small and local, that's it's not scalable, it's not really what we are looking at, and technology is only for very big things and for scaling everything. No, maybe technology has also to now have a new way of being. It is to look at the fact that small is beautiful, and how can technology help in that?
And I think that's spot on. But I think that different individuals will approach this new wave of being. At core, it's all about happiness, right? It's all about.
Yeah.
The value system is not iron, not number of cars we make. It's happiness. How people approach being happy, I think community is one of the things that we'll see. I think there are people that will, within that community, just want to work and provide service. There'll be people who want to be artists and who will create, and that'll be important to them, fulfilling their...
Or self-actualize in any way that they want to.
Well, so you have self-actualization as capabilities and skills. So you have self-actualization as enlightenment. And those people may spend more time sitting alone with their eyes closed than being in the community. But that's another way of being. I also think that there may be more hedonistic.
The point is that there'll be different ways.
Absolutely.
And whatever that may be, each one of us has our own perspectives of that. I don't know what those ways will be, but I think what is important is to support that direction, that what each of us, or at an individual or at a small community level, what we feel is going to make us more happy or what will lead to more well-being, that needs to be supported. And technology and artificial intelligence should perhaps work in those directions of supporting.
And so our job as designers now, we need to be aware we're designing for a new kind of world, a new way of being.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something where we're not just paying attention to, I have an AI hammer and I'm banging it everywhere. But really there's an onslaught of changes in the world that we have to deal with.
Yeah. And I think what is embedded in the algorithms, that in itself has to be very different. It can't be the same parameters and same values that we use now.
Because the core question of whether AI will be for good.
Yeah.
It's what the value system underlying it is.
Yeah. And so the concept of society in the loop, just like Professor Ben Schneiderman has made the idea of, human in the loop in terms of AI systems, human-centered AI, that human in the loop, humans to do that final sort of check, whether it's the labeling of data when data is being trained or a system is being trained with data, that there should be a check on how things are categorized or labeled, or whether a killer drone is going to now go off. There has to be a human in the loop. What I find even more interesting is Professor E.R. has added this idea of society in the loop.
That's better.
Societal values must be embedded.
Right. So
and so one of the things that I find interesting that he has been doing is this research around the world about this whole moral dilemma of the driverless car. And we've heard of, if a driverless car, encounters somebody crossing the road. And it's in a situation where either the passenger it's driving is going to be hurt or the people crossing the road will be hurt. Who should it really look after, right? All those, we've heard of these ethical dilemmas. What he has done, he's collected thousands and thousands of sort of responses by running surveys across the world about what do people think in these situations. He's just taken autonomous cars and said, what values are emerging from people's perspective from across the world, that in these particular situations, what should happen? What values are important?
So we want the AI algorithm to reflect the new values.
Yes. And taking society into consideration, and different cultures may have different values.
At the same time, and I said I disagree, I don't think we want people's daily life and work life to be about filling the gaps that we can't currently fill with AI. So if my job is to check because AI hallucinates.
The human in the loop is not about end users having to deal with that. It's about the creation of the system, that process itself having the checks and balances built into it. And that's why.
The human in the loop in creating the application is fine.
Yes.
That's obviously true.
That is not always the case. So what the human-centered AI process is pushing is that should be the way the process of creating AI must have that human sort of, element of check and balance. It's not for the end users. It's the process of creation.
Okay. But for the end user, we really have to look at adaptation to a value system.
Yes.
And that's what matters.
Yes, exactly.